Good morning, everybody. My name is Muchaneta. I am the founder of FashNerd.com. I'm here with these three wonderful ladies to talk all about sustainability and the role that it plays within the fashion industry. So what I think will be best is to let each of them kind of spend a minute introducing themselves and telling you a little bit about what it is that they do. And we'll start with you, Rosanne.
Hi everyone, I'm Rosanne. I'm with New Industrial Order, and we are here at Munich Fabric Star to present our Knit Cloud concept. The main thing that we want to say with Knit Cloud is stop the waste, keep the fashion. We've come up with a system for sustainable fashion that involves 3D knitting. This means we use 3D printers as 3D knitting machines as 3D printers to be able to create a totally circular fashion production and consumption system.
Morning, everyone. Hello? Yes. Hi, I'm Olivia Pinnock. I'm a journalist. I cover the fashion industry primarily for business titles such as Forbes and Drapers. And I'm also a university lecturer back in the UK at London College of Fashion, London Metropolitan University and Norwich University of the Arts. So that keeps me busy as well. And just over 3 years ago, I set up my own event series exploring ethical issues in the fashion industry called The Fashion Debates, which was kind of my way of delving a bit further into this space and sort of connecting the dots between all the different topics that sustainability covers, from the kind of environmental aspect to the social aspect, but also the way we operate in the fashion industry as well. So we've explored topics such as the lack of diversity in the fashion industry, mental health problems in the fashion industry, amount of unpaid internships and unpaid work and things like that as well. So that's been a real kind of area of interest for me, which I've kind of brought into my journalism and my lecturing work as well.
Hi everyone, this is on. Hi everyone, firstly thank you for having us here today. It's a real pleasure and an honour, so thank you. My name's Charney Magri. I'm a partner for a company called Do Epic Good. We're a global boutique content creation agency that create ideas that change the world without costing the earth. It's a part of a larger conglomerate called Do Epic Shit, and it basically does what it says on the tin. Within Do Epic Good, I'm very passionate about using brands and companies' position of power as a force for good. So I really try and work alongside brands and companies who are trying to do something good in the world, whether that be in sustainability, my niche being in fashion, or across the board in all different types of areas. I'm also a director, and you may have come in here earlier and just seen the docuseries that was playing here called Catwalk to Creation. That was a docuseries that launched last year, and then part one last year, and then part two in April this year. If you haven't seen it, I believe it's showing all week this week, and it'll be on later today.
It'll be on tomorrow at 2. So I kind of recommend that you all try and catch it.
Thanks.
To start the conversation, I want to let you ladies and gentlemen know that what we're going to do is just kind of talk about sustainability. There is no particular structure. I really like a conversation that flows. So please feel free to put your hand up to ask a question if you have one. It's going to be very informal and just to talk about how we can make a change within the fashion industry. So to start off with, ladies, I'm thinking, what is your definition of sustainability? Because I think it means different things for different people. Would you like to start? Let's say Olivia.
Go on, okay, I'll jump in there. I think sustainability does cover a huge amount, and I think it's about thinking about the ways we can be innovative and creative and think about the wider picture in our work. And that means sustaining the planet, it means sustaining the people that work in the fashion industry, it means sustaining business, and it means sustaining ourselves as well, and and bringing those ideas and whatever that means for us and whatever we can encourage those aspects in our work forward.
And for yourself, Charney, what do you think? How you define sustainability?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a really big topic and certainly a buzzword at the minute. Individually, for myself, sustainability is more about sustaining, and it comes more into circularity for me. So it kind of dips into the circular economy space. where we know that something that we're producing is always going to be sustainable. It's always going to be there. We're always going to be able to tap into it. That's probably the best way I would say I could describe sustainability to me.
Rosanne, you got anything to add to that?
Not really, other than that sustainability, we have to find a space where sustaining the planet coincides with people feeling happy and having their needs fulfilled. That's very important because nobody wants to sacrifice quality of life for sustainability. So that's an aspect that we think about. So that maybe that's an addition.
And with regards to, as you most likely know, there's a big thing about designing new materials, and it's mainly linked to sustainability. I mean, what are your thoughts of, let's say, a modern meadow coming up with like a new type of leather, people looking to plants and the mycelium to create more fabrics? I mean, do you think this is something that is sustainable within the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely incredible being here and, and all the exhibitors out there who are doing really incredible, exciting, innovative things. And, I think particularly when it comes to talking about materials, they are resources that are very often given to us by the planet. And we need to respect that. And part of the problem, well, actually, I think the biggest core problem that it really comes down to is the amount we're using those resources, the amount of pressure we're putting on them. And for a very long time, the textile industry has kind of honed its materials and picked its favorite materials, if you like, for whatever reasons, and kind of narrowed down on, quite a small pool, actually, of materials. And so now is a really exciting time where we're realizing that actually those are, if we want to sustain our industry, if we want to sustain our business, if we want to sustain the planet and the world we live in, we need to diversify. And a lot of those are at quite early stages, which makes them very exciting, but many are still kind of getting onto the cusp of being very commercially viable, and I'm really excited to see where that goes in the next few years.
And what about plastic? I know this is quite a big thing. We all trying to use less plastic. It's considered to be quite, a big pollutant. And the fashion industry is trying to rectify that by finding a way of recycling plastic, reusing it, and coming up with different type of products. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
I love this question. So anyone who's seen the docu-series that I was talking about earlier will know that 83% of all of our water contains plastic microfibers, and a third of that is said to come from the fashion industry. And I mean, when I was doing the docu-series, I found out this information. I was completely blown away by that. I can't believe it. So we're talking, when I say water, we're talking rainwater, we're talking bottled water, we're talking tap water, sea water, every type of water. We can't get away from it. And when we go into communities such as like New York City, it goes up to about 92%. So when we're looking at the fashion industry as a whole or as a collective, we really, really need to stop and think about this, of what the damage that we're actually doing environmentally, into our food chains, with ourselves, because we actually don't know we don't know the cause, we don't know the damage, we don't know the problems that are going to happen from this. And like we were talking about last night, there's evidence that's starting to come out that those plastic microfibers that are actually going into our body, they're acting like magnets for toxins, and they're actually holding on to these toxins within our body, and we don't know the side effects of that yet. So there's not enough research that's going into it yet to be able to say this is what's going to happen. So plastics is a huge thing. When you're looking at the industry as a whole, 63% of our fibre production is coming from synthetic fibres, and this is oil-based fibres. So we need to look at what we're actually doing, what we're using, what materials we're using, the materials that are virgin materials, the materials that are actually natural materials, so you're looking at your cotton or your wool, your hemp, whatever it might be. But also, as I'm saying, going back to the virgin materials, why do we have to keep going into virgin materials? And this is why it's so great being here as well, because we're looking at all the innovative products that we've got here coming out. There's so many different solutions that we should be researching and looking into. And I think plastics, this whole alarm that's going on globally at the moment, has woken us up and have gone, okay, we need to do something about this, because it is really serious.
I mean, I think that is something that everyone in every industry should really tackle, not just the fashion industry. The food industry is a good example. We were talking about children's toys being plastic. You know, how can we tackle this? But what are your thoughts in the sense of like the fashion industry trying to do good and reuse plastic? I mean, do you think that is a long-term solution, a short-term solution, no solution?
I have a bit of a gripe with kind of recycled polyester, and that I think it's better than virgin polyester. Okay. But again, the real impact with polyester is what happens to it after the customer's taken it home and how much they're washing it and how those microfibers are getting into the system. So, I mean, I think it's really exciting to see Adidas, for example, using recycled plastics in trainers, for example, because they're not something that's going to be washed once a week or whatever. Yeah. So that's quite, exciting and interesting. But I think we do need to be really careful about shouting from the rooftops about recycled polyester, because if it's still, kind of putting microfibers into the ocean, then it's a bit worrying.
I just have something to add on there, and I don't know whether anyone here can answer the question. I'm still looking into it. But with recycled polyester or plastics, and we're putting it into our clothes, has there been any research done that proves that there's not more microfibers shedding into the water when we're washing it, or is there less? And I don't know the answer to this yet. Some people have said there's actually more. I don't know whether that's true or not. I'm still in the process of researching it. So we might find out in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, these collaborations that we think are fantastic that are going on actually may not be. And one thing that I always say through the docu-series of Catwalk to Creation, or whenever you're going on the journey of starting to learn about all these things, don't take it on level 1, don't take it on level 2, go down, there's so many different levels, you can go down 15 layers and you'll still be finding out more information. And that's why, when I see these collaborations, I think they're incredible. But when will the research come out and say, well, actually, that wasn't so good after all? And that's just one thing I just want to flag up now. I don't know the answer to it, but I'm just throwing it out there. Always be curious and always think about these things, because it may not be the answer.
You got anything to add, Rosanne?
Well, it's actually also a question. I'm not an expert on recycled materials and stuff like that. We're really focused on the production system and the consumption system. But this is, of course, a topic that we would like to know much more about. What worries me about banning plastics, for example, is the question for the world population and the way it's developing. Are we going to have enough raw material to dress everybody? So there would have to be like a global accounting system where we would know all resources of different materials and as diverse as possible, I guess. That would be a wonderful vision for the world, that there would be local crops and materials everywhere that we could use to make our clothes. But yeah, we just need more information. I find it very hard to decide, are we going into this wool, are we going into this recycled PET or whatever on a global scale, because this is our thing at New Industrial Order. We try to think really big to find the solutions that are actually going to help make our planet livable in the future.
Yeah,
so
I think it's
if anybody has an idea, but I think this topic is at the United Nations actually to make this sort of global accounting system. But I think that's what we need in order to make real good decisions on a larger scale.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's always the elephant in the room in a kind of industry-facing space like this of, like, we do need to produce less. Yeah. We do need to sell less. And that's, what no business wants to hear, and the thing that people don't always want to tackle head on. But I think that's where kind of circularity is becoming a really interesting space, and seeing new business models coming out there, the way that brands are now trying to take back their stuff from the customers once they're done with them, resell them, recycle them, upcycle them, do all these things. Like, this is quite an interesting space as well, of like, how can we encourage more responsible consumerism but still maintain our businesses and look at new business models to tackle that.
What you just said is a really good point, and I think you also mentioned about information. What are your thoughts? Let's say the people in the crowd, and they're like, okay, you guys are giving us great information, but where else can we actually access this information? Because I think that's where we're lacking when it comes to sustainability. People don't know where to get information from, where to be educated on how they can be better, how they can be a conscious consumer, how students can have access to new materials or new ways of doing fashion. I mean, what would you advise the audience if they were to ask you, okay, you guys are giving me great information, but where else can I go and get further education on this particular topic?
I'm just going to talk about Catwalk again. So when I first started researching for the docu-series, I was exactly that. So, and we were talking about it again last night. So I'm a busy working mum. I started researching things. I would start going down the rabbit hole, and it would be more convoluted than when I first started. And I got really confused. So if you're at that same space, or you've started the research part, or whatever stage you're at, it can be really confusing. But part of the thing that we do with Catwalk to Creation is that we actually provide solutions at the end of the docu-series. And if you've seen it on Facebook or wherever it's sitting or wherever it's living, you will see links at the bottom that will always say, if you're in the industry and you're a designer, go to this site. If you're a consumer and you want to know more, go to this site. So there's always links, because there's always need for more information. And I think it's really, really important, because if you're anything like me when I first started, it is just so confusing, and you don't know where to go. And then, as I was saying before, you don't know whether the information that you've got is completely correct. And it can be quite disheartening and very confusing, to the point where actually the first year when I was in the research part of the docu-series, it sounds like a first world problem, but I just couldn't shop. I couldn't go into any store and buy anything, because it just paralysed me so much. I knew too much. But afterwards, then obviously the solutions come through. So yes, it's a really important question, and something that with Catwalk to Creation we really try and do is provide solutions for you.
Yeah, I think one of my favourite resources from an industry perspective is Common Objective, who some of you might be familiar with. I find it fantastic as a journalist because, exactly as you were saying, there is not enough reliable research being done in this space. And a lot of it comes from sources with a certain agenda on something that they want to push. But Common Objective is fantastic at... so it has a kind of networking part to the sort of the member site. So it can help you meet suppliers and other brands or whatever it is you're looking for, people in the industry who are working in a more sustainable way. But then they also have fantastic content that they create themselves, where they can talk you through certain issues bit by bit. You know, I think that is a really key tip as well, is to understand your impact. You know, what are you in charge of in your business? What environmental impact is that having? What impact is that having on the people in the supply chain? Or these sorts of things. Understanding where you can make the biggest changes. I think that's kind of really key to when you're getting started and you're feeling really overwhelmed, is going, okay, where do I need to start? Find that out first, and spend some time finding that out as well. So then you can start to deep dive into some of these resources that they put out, and they also do their own kind of research reports, which are really helpful. And I also think, you know, you don't have to be alone in this either. You know, there are sustainability consultants out there who, you know, have probably been working in this space for a lot longer, and I think collaboration is so important. And I think, you know, it's something that the fashion industry has traditionally been really bad at, because we like to keep our little close company secrets to ourselves and not let anybody else steal those ideas. You know, I think it's really interesting when you look at other industries like technology, and technology is very much about, you know, sharing open source ideas and collaborating with other tech partners who together you can achieve something fantastic. So, you know, if you don't feel like you have the individual knowledge, or you don't feel like you have the knowledge elsewhere within your company that you can reach out to, find consultants, find agencies, find experts in this field and bring them in.
Yes, I agree with that completely. I think collaboration is key in any field, and it's quite interesting to see the fashion industry collaborating with scientists and people like that. You know, I think somebody said something very interesting to me when bringing it back to the microfibers that we were just discussing, that why doesn't the fashion industry speak to the washing machine makers and work together and come up with a way that we can kind of maybe lessen microfibers being released into the water? You know, I think that, you know, it's a very simple answer, but I don't know why we kind of haven't really thought about that. But what I want to talk about now is continue on with the conscious consumer. I recently wrote an article that was asking consumers how important sustainability was. And the millennials were the ones that were more likely to embrace sustainability. I think the silent generation and the baby boomers, less so. So what are your thoughts in terms of encouraging people to embrace sustainability, avoid brands that like to greenwash a lot? You know, how are they able to kind of get through this maze of information and brands telling you that they do this and that, but they kind of sometimes don't really do this and that. They're just trying to make you buy a product. So how would somebody be able to get through that maze?
Shall I do that one? Yeah, it's difficult, but if you take the trouble to really read what a company is doing in the About page, for example, really read their story and think about it a little bit, then most of the times you can see whether it's real or not, in my experience. Another good thing is to look at well-known certifications, like for organic fabrics and stuff like that. But also, yeah, it's just common sense sometimes, because if you look at your own closet and see a lot of stuff hanging there, you know, do you need more stuff? I started this new industrial order movement from my own closet, actually, and analyzing what was in there and what was really making me happy. So which clothes were really doing something for me and giving me confidence, comfort, and when you look at your consumption patterns like that and see, okay, where did this go wrong? How did all this crap end up in my wardrobe? You can kind of find your way into a sort of, like it's a fashionable thing, the capsule wardrobe. And I really think this is the way forward to the future. But important is also that you allow yourself to have fun with your fashion, because it's a fun thing. It's something that delights many people, including us. So we try to find a way to keep the fun and keep the playfulness, but not materialize it every time. You know, it's not necessary to buy something new every time. You can give your look a new direction with a certain combination of things, or you can keep it down and feel really happy and really build up your own signature style.
Or start doing home economics.
Yeah.
For you young people who don't know what home economics is we were taught back in the day how to sew and, personalize our clothes and whatnot. And I really think they should bring that back. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, if you've got a pair of jeans, how can I repair the pair of jeans? How can I kind of add a little bit of this and a little bit of that and make them new again? I mean, do you think this is something that can be adopted nowadays, where everybody's all about new clothes and new style and designer wear and whatnot?
I mean, I'm a great example of someone who believes in that wholeheartedly, and yet can barely sew a button on. But again, I think this is a really interesting space for brands to think about, where they haven't, once the clothes have gone out the door, they kind of stop thinking about them. And there's a really fantastic brand I love called Clothes Doctor, who are basically the millennial version of your high street tailor. And it's so convenient. You just book in, they tell you exactly how much everything's going to cost up front. So you pick, I need a zip replacing, I've got a hole in something. They'll also do more interesting upcycling stuff as well, where they'll do it via video chat with you. So you kind of book a consultancy via video chat, and you show them the piece and give them your measurements and tell them what you want. But if it's something like a simple repair, then you just kind of book those in, and a courier comes to your house, picks up the stuff, takes it away. They have a look into it for you, fix it up very nicely for you, and deliver it back to you. So it's kind of like Amazon ordering. But they're also partnering with high street retailers as well to try and bring repairs into store. I know Levi's do it, Patagonia does it. It's interesting to see these brands kind of focusing on the repair side. And I mean, it'd be great if everybody knew how to do simple repairs, but I think the challenge is when clothing is so cheap, how do you encourage someone to spend £10 on getting a £10 wool sweater darned the hole in, That makes a lot of sense.
I mean, in terms of... we've all kind of been used to now buying cheaper clothes. You can go and buy a £4 bikini in H&M, and you can go and buy, a £20 dress from Zara. how are we going to be able to change consumer behavior? Because we're so used to being able to pay for things so cheaply. And to be sustainable and to buy sustainable brands is quite pricey and it's quite expensive. And as much as consumers want to be able to help the planet, some of them just simply can't afford it. So how do you see us being able to change a consumer's behavior through, I guess, pricing or through making things more affordable? I mean, where do you kind of see that happening?
Well, there's two things that should happen, we feel. One thing is that new trends generally start at the audience that can afford new stuff. There's a group of consumers, of course, that leads the way in trends and in new technologies, for example, and adopting a certain lifestyle. So those are the people who care about the environment already. And we try to speak to that audience because we know these people are leading. I mean, this movement is growing. More and more people are starting to realize what we're doing to the world. So we have to focus on these people first because it's just the way things go generally in the fashion industry and anywhere where trends are involved. So it's okay if it starts with a group and if this group expands. And this means that right now, of course, the sustainable options lack the scale that other fashion companies have, which makes it more expensive. But when it grows, the prices will go down, but to a certain level. So that's the second point. Clothes can't be that cheap, and they shouldn't be that cheap. So I think basically it's a political thing that at some point the true cost of clothes should be incorporated in the price, and no fashion company is going to do that unless they're forced to by legislation.
So you're thinking if H&M, instead of selling a $4.99 shirt, which is a normal T-shirt, and then they sell the $7.99 conscious T-shirt, they should just get rid of the $4.99 shirt?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And I would also question the conscious T-shirt for $7.99, actually.
I'm going to jump in there. This is a really big topic and a really big conversation, and I'm going to try and wrap it up as quick as I can because I could go on about this for ages. So going back to your very first point when you started talking about conscious consumers, there's two things here. One, advertising, and two, responsibility. I've been in the industry, in advertising industry, for over 20 years, and I have been responsible for selling you stuff that you don't need. That's what we do in advertising. And I have been fueling consumerism because I've been creating campaigns that go up on billboards that make you want to go and buy those beautiful trousers or that beautiful dress that makes you feel fabulous that Friday night that you go out, and then the whole thing drops off and you need to go and do another shop the following week to kind of keep feeling good about yourself. So responsibility, this is my second part. I took responsibility in my industry in with what I do, and I put my hand on my heart and said, right, I've got to actually stop doing this and actually do something that's better for the world, which is where Do Epic Good comes through. So what we do with Do Epic Good is we're working with brands and companies who are actually true to what they're saying. So if you have a brand or company, we don't have a certification per se, but if you come through Do Epic Good in our creative content agency, then it's almost like a seal of approval. You can be assured as a consumer that you're actually buying something that's going to be worth buying. It's going to be, we've done the research. We know what you can trust what we're putting through Do Epic Good. Now, as a conscious consumer, I think that's where we need to go. We need to be able to go to trusted places, whether it's advertising agencies like myself or whether it's, wherever it might be. We also need to take responsibility. All of us need to take responsibility. Whether you're a designer, whether you're in B2B, B2C, whatever stage, wherever you're at, you all need to take responsibility. And I think as conscious consumers, that's the only way we can go forward. Just as a show of hands, just so that we can kind of understand, do you mind if I ask sort of where everyone sits here? Are we industry or are we brands, designers? Like, is there designers here? Yeah, and is there the sort of trade as well? Any trade? What are the other categories that are here as well? Brands, many brands? Yeah, is it mainly, so it's mainly brands? Anyone else here just not in a brand? Where else do you come from if you're not in a brand? Just shout it. Manufacturing, yeah, okay. So as manufacturers, you have that responsibility to actually sit up and go, okay, what are we producing here? Where is it coming from? As designers, you have a responsibility to be on the forefront for, the forward-facing for consumers. What are you designing? And is there an end of use with this garment that you're designing? Or is it just as soon as it goes out the door, you've made your money, that's it, I've got my hands up and it's done? Thinking about things a little bit further than just the point of sale is really where that responsibility comes in for you. So it's just really thinking about your position of power, because you have a position of power. And as a designer, you have an incredible power, like more than, and I get goosebumps about this, more than you know.
What would you like to say?
I come from the U.S. I'm involved in a brand. I'm a materials sourcing and development manager. And what I've noticed from all the conversations that are occurring in the last days, this is my first time at this show, and I find it absolutely incredible. But there's a missing piece and a disconnect. I work with a team of designers, but yet they don't have a clue about the supply chain. But going into the supply chain is very, very deep. And I think what we are ignoring here are the actual fundamental bottom layers of the supply chain, which are the chemical companies. And that's something no one has talked about in the last few days, because the chemical companies are the basic source for all of our dyeing, our finishing, all the processes that go up the chain into the finished product. But what we've been talking about mainly in the last couple of days is the finished good to the actual apparel piece or footwear piece, let's say. And I actually would like to hear some conversations about that. And I don't mean today, but I think it's something that we really need to be aware of. And I think that there is an educational disconnect between designers and the supply chain and manufacturing. Big item.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Do you have a specific question that you would love these ladies to answer? Because we would love to maybe start a conversation on it. Maybe, have you got anything specific? Feel free. We're happy to, have the conversation go in that direction.
Would this particular venue consider having the basic chemical companies present to talk about these issues, which would be BASF and Huntsman, for instance, dye stuffs? I think most people are really not aware what they're doing. And I've had to dig really deep in my company to get to these sources and start these conversations within the supply chain. And I'm just wondering if any of you have had this experience, or you're in touch with the consumers. Have they talked about this to you? Because the consumer is more educated today than they've ever been. So I don't know.
I have lots I want to say, but I think the lady behind you really wants to jump in as well.
I'll take this one. How about that?
Thank you. Yeah, it was just that being in conversation with the organisers of Keyhouse as well. We do have a presence this year from our chroma, if that's along the lines of what you're talking about, because we are aware we do need to have more of that presence from the initial, from the beginnings, educate people from, just as you said, from that starting point as well. So we have a chroma here, but yeah, it's definitely something we have to work on, our presence here in Keyhouse as well, I think, for the future.
I know you're going to jump in with this one, but I couldn't agree with you more about that conversation. Transparency, traceability, and accountability are the three big ones that I think really need to come through with when you're designing. As a consumer, I want to know exactly where my products are coming from. I want to be able to go right back to the source. I want to know who made my clothes, literally like as the hashtag with Fashion Revolution. Part of Catwalk, what we did is we went right back to the source. So Catwalk to creation. We went back to the source. We found out where that garment was made. We followed it right back. We traced it back, right back to the factory. And you're exactly right. Those chemicals are so hazardous. They're so damaging to unborn children, to people who are working in the factories, to kids who are working in the factories. I mean, it's horrendous when you go into it. And you're right, you need visibility. As a designer, you have to have visibility of where your supply chain is going. And as we know, when those supply chains get over, there's too many kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? too many orders that go into the factory, then they push it off to someone else. They subcontract it off to someone else. And that's where you lose the visibility. If you can keep that visibility in your supply chain, you know where it's coming from, you know what's happening in your supply chain, then you've got no problems. But as a designer, you have to keep a hold of that. And it's so important. So I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Yeah. Several things I want to say. I'm going to try and keep it quick. As someone who works in the education space, I completely agree with you about how, it is a struggle when you've got, a 3-year undergraduate program to teach them everything they need to do the job that you're teaching them to do. But I mean, I lecture in the fashion communication space, but I take my students on a trip to a factory and show them how clothes are made, even though that's not actually that relevant to their job. I had one student turn around to me, actually several students turn around to me and go, I had no idea that people actually sat there on sewing machines and made my clothes. They just see, I was a little bit like, okay, well, I'm glad we did that trip. But I think because they just see like a £5 price tag and assume a robot has made it, because how could a human make it for £5? And so that's quite astonishing. And I would really encourage, if there's anyone here who is really passionate about this topic, to reach out to your local university, to reach out to your local fashion school, or maybe if you even have sort of, further education spaces that do fashion courses, and say, would you like me to come in and do a talk about this? Because, it is fantastic to see that actually sustainability is becoming a huge part of the fashion education programs. And that's really great, because that's how we're going to get a whole generation of people coming in who actually know about these things. So that's hugely important. But do offer to go talk. You might even get paid. And it's a great way to bring about change, because I really agree with that. The other thing I wanted to say is gone out of my head, so I'm going to pass.
Well, another place, I recommend trying Suchi.com. They write a lot about supply chains and manufacturing and how it merges with technology. It makes it easier for people to understand the role that they can play and the changes that are taking place. So I would recommend that as a source of information if you really kind of want to know more about the supply chain, want to know more about how the role blockchain plays as well in that. It's Suchi.com. It's a startup based in New York. It's SUUCHI.com. And I find them quite resourceful, and I do actually also contribute to their site as well, because I do write a lot about the supply chain, because I think a lot is going on. I think the manufacturing industry is forgotten sometimes, and people really need to kind of come back to looking at a product before it gets to the consumer as opposed to when after it gets to the consumer, because it's just as important. So do check them out if you kind of want to go down that road, for sure.
I remembered what I wanted to say.
Go ahead, let's hear it.
I think we need to think about the questions we're asking of the people that we work with, really, really importantly. And this fits into so many other things, but, so often when we kind of, sit at our desk and do a little stuff, and then we, the design team then hand that over to the production team, and then the production team goes to speak to the suppliers. And so often what we just say is, here's what I want to do, how much is it? Like, that's it. And, what we need to start doing is going, okay, so why does it cost that much there, but it costs this much somewhere else? Are you paying a living wage to the people? Do you have any certificates? When was your last audit? Can you tell me more about this process? Where are you sourcing your fabrics from? Because, a lot of people are going just straight to their factories, and their factories say, oh yeah, we can get you like white jersey. It's super easy. And we go, okay, fantastic. We need to start asking them, where are you getting that white jersey from? Where are you? And it is, some big brands have as many as 35,000, once you start going down the first tier suppliers to the second tier suppliers, you can have 35,000 companies involved in that for one clothing brand. So I'm not suggesting you go out and try and find 35,000 people. But, do start with those asking questions and thinking about the things that you want to know and how that can be improved, and weighing up the cost of what you're getting versus the cost of what that has for other people. And this kind of links into what we were saying about, cheaper fashion and stuff. And in America, I think between sort of 2006 and 2016, the cost of housing went up 4%, the cost of food and drink went up 4%, and the cost of clothing dropped 9%. Like, we kind of have this conversation about, it's so unaffordable to buy sustainable. Actually I think we need to go, but we were paying more for clothing and nobody was walking around naked. It was possible to do before, and rather than kind of constantly driving, and I'm sure those of you that work in, manufacturing and things like that as well, you're probably feeling all the partners that you work with are just after the bottom line. They just want to know how much it's going to cost, and actually let's start having a more meaningful conversation.
Yeah, I totally agree with your last point. We envision a world which is within reach with the current technologies, and when everybody would work together, we could create a whole new level of sustainability and of happiness at the same time. I mean, clothes can be better. We are looking for improvements in the fit of the clothes, like really individual, personalized fit. Is something that makes many people very happy. It's the most luxurious feeling, like couture for everybody, coming from a totally robotized supply chain. But it adds value to the experience of dressing. And it's, like I said, a new level of sustainability in which, like the gentleman over there said, everybody has to work together, from the chemical companies to the consumers, to the manufacturing companies and the designers. But I think it's possible, actually. I hope you guys all agree. When you really dive into it and try to overcome the hurdles that we are experiencing now, you can envision a future that's actually better for everybody and for the planet.
One of my visions as a conscious consumer and also as a visual communicator is I want to be able to walk into any store in 5 or hopefully not 10 years' time, but maybe 5 years' time. And I want to go up to every swing tag that has got the garment's details on there, and I want to be able to see exactly where it's made. So I want to put up my phone with a QR code, and I want that QR code to link into your supply chain. So have a think about that in terms of the levels of where you're going. But as a designer, for me, that's your responsibility. I want to know where you have sourced everything. I want to see who's made it. I want to see the supply chain, where it's come right through, how it's got to where the shop it's got into, who put the zip on, all of those things. So as a visual communicator and as a conscious consumer, that's where I see the future of where your responsibility lies. And I really, really hope that in the future, that's where it's going to be. I also talked last night about the traffic light idea that I have that I also want to see. So, for example, on the back of a tin or a packet of chips or something like that, you have all of your ingredients there. You have your carbohydrates, you have your salt, you have your sugars, you have everything on there. And you know what your intake is because it has a little bit of a, you've had too much salt today or all those things. You have that information. It empowers you, and it also educates you to make the decision of whether you have 1 or 2, maybe, or not, or it just at least makes you aware. I want that same information on your swing tags as designers, and also including obviously in the manufacturing side as well. I want to know what it is, whether it's a red, an orange, or a green traffic light. So whether you've addressed human rights and whether you've addressed environmental issues, whether it's a red or an orange or a green, I want to know where that is. So as a conscious consumer, when I walk into a shop in 5 years' time, I want to see the film and I want to see the traffic light. And I want to know what you're doing to actually take responsibility to make sure that we've got a sustainable planet, so that we have a future.
That sounds scary, right, guys? I admit the designers are quaking in their boots for that demand. But what's great about, I think what you're asking for, Charney, is achievable. This is basically because technology is so advanced now. And I'm a big lover of the merge of fashion with technology. And I feel like we have the technology to be able to give you that information. It's possible. In terms of manufacturing, I remember I spoke to some students and they were really kind of like using immersive technologies to visit factories in Bangladesh or in China, and to be able to put those goggles on and be able to see how your clothes are being manufactured, the condition of the factory, what are they working on, are they being paid enough, what do they look like, are they kind of like, look like they're happy in the situation. So I think this is very important, because if designers are able to see where their clothes are made, then they are much more conscious and they can make better decisions. There's the blockchain, which you can also use to be a bit more transparent. So I think technology is really a key factor in giving what the information that you want. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that technology is really playing a key role, or it's just at the beginning and it's kind of making its way? Or, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely we believe that technology is key. Because it's all about connecting all the dots in the supply chain and making information available to everybody. And yeah, the way we are connected right now is truly amazing, and the possibilities that are evolving are even more thrilling. So yeah, definitely technology is what we believe will make the world a better place, as long as we make sure that we use technology in the right way to do something good, to do a bit good. Yeah.
Any thoughts on technology, Olivia, Charney?
We're being very polite on this panel. Yeah, I think technology absolutely has a massive role to play. It has a massive role to play in everything. So how could it not in this space? And I think one of the great things about technology is I think it's actually really exciting to consumers. I think they like to, that's like novelty factor of when they see something new, and actually, maybe investing in blockchain technology to where, your kind of end consumer, again, can kind of scan that thing on the clothing and find out about the supply chain and who made it or whatever, and it's a great way to tell stories. I love stories. That's why I'm a journalist. Yeah. I love stories in my clothing. I love, the kind of added value of that story that brings to my clothing. And, you can do that with something like blockchain. And that might cost you a similar amount to getting a certificate on your clothing, but it's a bit more pizzazzy.
So do you think it's more about experience? If sustainability becomes a little sexy, and people will want to experience it a little bit more, would you say that will be the case?
Yeah, definitely. And that's our role as designers, I guess. We have to make it as exciting as it is, actually. It's really exciting to think about how our survival as a species and the survival of our planet and what the planet's going to look like in the future. I think it's really exciting and very inspiring to think about these topics, and we have experienced that many people find it exciting as well and really want to contribute. So, we call on all designers to tell this story as beautifully and as clearly as possible. Okay. Because, designers design our future and the way it looks. Another aspect I really like about technology is that it also shapes fashion, and it has done in the past. The methods that we've had to make clothing and to make fabrics have determined looks. So at one point with this knitting, the 3D knitting that we do, I was struggling a bit because I was worried that the product didn't look like other luxurious, beautiful products look at the moment. For example, there are like visible aspects from the 3D knitting that I couldn't hide. And then at some moment I realized that I shouldn't hide them because it's just the way the technology spits out these garments, and I should really embrace it and take it as a part of the narrative to show how this new technology works, and it will probably become the new look. And this also counts for example, the herbal dyes that we've been seeing in this exhibition. Very beautiful shades, but it's not very unpredictable. But maybe this is the look of the future. I think that's really exciting to speak about the future and fashion.
I love the way you talk about this. Like, it's really inspiring, and I think sometimes when we start to think about sustainability, we feel like it's a challenge, and we feel scared, and it's kind of dark, and we don't want to think about all these negative things. But actually, I think it's really nice to be like, actually, this is the future. There's no question about that. Yeah. Do we want to go along with that future? Do we want to be a part of that? Do we want to be innovators? Do we want to be designers for the future? Do we want to change and leave our mark on something that's so fundamental to ourselves and our society?
Yeah. And I also see that young people are really understanding this. So the 20-year-olds coming to our stands, they're like, yeah, sure, this is totally happening. And they're not questioning our method at all. They totally understand that things should go differently, and they also feel the burden. I experience that they do feel a burden, and I feel sorry for them, and I try to show them a way out, show them that it can also be light and it can be the most fun thing to do, to choose sustainable fashion and to choose consciously and to really work on your personal look and emphasize your unique being. It's so much fun. I mean, this identity and authenticity are the big words of today's fashion, I suppose. So, I think we have a bright future ahead as long as we all collaborate, and those big brands who are not willing to pay 1 cent more for the sourcing of a material, I won't say what I want to say.
I mean, I want to bring up a subject that I found quite fascinating. I know you're from the Netherlands, so you might be aware of who they are. I came across this brand in the Netherlands that is a lending library. So you go in there, you pick your coats that you quite like, you check it out and you walk out, and then you put your coat on for, let's say, 2 weeks, you decide you don't want to wear it anymore, you take it back to the library and you swap it for something else. This is something that seems to be quite... to be adopted by the Dutch. They seem to be embracing this idea of a lending library for clothes. I mean, do you think this is a solution that might work, or do you think it's just a thing that is a phase and it won't catch on?
I love this, the renting, the rental side of things. I think it's the future. And actually, when you look at it from a business model point of view, it means that as designers, you're actually going to be able to make more money. So instead of actually selling your item and then that's it, you're actually going to be able to rent it and keep making money. So as a business model, that's actually really exciting. Rentals, so there's like Rent the Runway, I think, in the States. There's
I think this one was called Lena's. I think.
I think they're definitely the way for the future. Absolutely. And it also encompasses more the circularity or circular economy that I was talking about at the very beginning. It's really exciting. And if you can tap into that, for sure, definitely. It's
I'm really a fan of those initiatives as well. And we are touching the subject a little bit. I was thinking about this because we are working on body measurement extraction technology to be able to determine people's sizes, body measurements, to be able to make a fitting product for them, because we want to have 0 returns. It also saves a lot of CO2 and stuff. So we are working on this with several partners and doing some pilots connecting existing body measurement extraction technology to making those on-demand knits. But I was talking to one of the people in the Netherlands that's working on this library system. And it was not Lena, but another initiative. They're now popping up like mushrooms. It's great. I was thinking that if they would be able to do virtual fitting, it would be like massive.
Probably.
Because the problem was, I went to Lena Library because it's close to my home in Amsterdam, and I was really excited. And then I was trying some things on, and they didn't fit. And I'm not really particularly difficult to dress, but they just didn't fit. And so the nice things didn't fit me. And then I had to go for another option, which was not really to my taste. So I ended up leaving without anything. And if this would be online on a large scale, like ASOS level size, with lots of clothes, virtual fitting options that I could see how a garment would look on me, because you wouldn't have most of the time the whole size range. They wouldn't have it in the library. They would have like separate items, perhaps secondhand or perhaps leftovers from companies or smaller size runs. And I think that this virtual fitting would be so exciting, because then you could really match people to clothes on a big level, and I think then it's like, phew.
So it kind of shows potential, and we can kind of we can build on that.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I see a big future for these kinds of companies as well, and we with our knits would love to connect to those companies as well, because it can be that you at some point you don't feel comfortable in a certain piece of knitwear anymore, for example, and what if somebody who has your size and your particular body dimensions or preferences, and he or she would be in another country, or you would have your size buddy, and you could just switch clothes with those people, and it would be brilliant, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I've actually just rented a hat for a wedding I'm going to this weekend. I think they're really fantastic. But I also kind of agree they do have limitations. And I think, most people aren't going to be willing to rent their day-to-day wear. Like at the moment, at this stage, most people are renting occasion wear, for something special, or, maybe like a coat or something you want to wear for a long time. I really love what Mud Jeans is doing with their leasing jeans model. So they're a brand that allows you to, it's almost kind of like a payment plan. So rather than kind of borrowing something for a week and then sending it back, you kind of pay a flat fee, and then you pay a monthly fee on top of that to pay for your jeans. And basically, once you've had them for a year, you will have paid the same amount as buying one new pair brand new cost. So it doesn't cost you any more than just buying a normal pair. And then you either decide to keep them and you stop making your payments, or you send them back to them and they can either send you a new pair and you continue making your payments, or you can just send it back to them and they will then either sell them, if they're still in good condition, they sell them as vintage, or they use the denim to create recycle the denim and use it to make their jeans. So that's also a really interesting, different way of doing rental.
Unfortunately, we're coming to the end, but I'm going to do something a little different, and hopefully you guys can play along. If you want to ask these ladies questions, we're going to be at the back at the FashNerd Lounge, so please feel free, sit on the sofa, grab a coffee, let's have a chat. But what I'm going to do with you guys now, if those who are willing, is to ask a question, because Charney wants to ask you guys a question, and I would love for one of you to stand up and answer it, and we can do as many of you as you can in the next 3 minutes. So, Charney, throw the question out to the crowd.
Oh my gosh, you didn't tell me you were going to do this. Okay, right. Okay, after listening to today's talk, what's one key takeaway that you're going to take away today and actually change when you walk out of this room?
No, I wanted you to ask you the epic one.
Oh.
That's the one I want you to ask the crowd. I think that's a very interesting question.
Oh, this question.
Yes. Charney's been walking around the Keyhouse asking people one question.
Okay, so how important is it for you to do epic good?
Who wants to be the first to pop up? 30 seconds or less. How important is it for you to do epic good?
I have to record you too. Come on, don't be shy.
One person pop up. Let's start off with Kelly.
Otherwise, we're going to pick on someone and come and get you.
Kelly, you're going to start the crowd up?
Grab the mic.
Hello.
Yep.
Do you want me to stand up?
Yes, let's hear. How important is it?
Okay, well, I'd say after listening to what you've all been discussing, that it's not just about where you buy and what you buy. I think it's how you change your perspective to think in a way that makes you live in an epically good way, or in a sustainable manner, or in a way that you personally feel happier in how you survive and how you spend your life. So that's my takeaway, as well as how to do that.
Let's pass on the mic. Any hands up? Anybody bravely want to tell me?
Come on, be brave.
Thank you.
So I'm actually a designer, and I developed a concept where you can combine sustainability and trends. So basically, you can buy add-ons. So that's kind of the concept, how you can keep fashion interesting. And in terms of epic good, so I thought, okay, you're still consuming more because you're still buying add-ons, which you don't particularly need, because you can basically buy different sleeves, different straps, frills. So I was thinking, in order to close the loop, you can basically give to social organizations by buying the add-ons. So you kind of give yourself some happiness with clothes, but you also give back. So yeah. So I think this is something I'm working on, and I'm hoping it can also be larger than just a small brand. So yeah, that's like the epic thing I'm
Well, thank you very much, brave lady. So that's the end. And please feel free to come and join us in the lounge. That's where the ladies are going to be. If you have specific questions, they'll be happy to answer them. Thank you for being a great audience, and we look forward to seeing you around the Keyhouse.